Okay, it's 8 p.m. We're in Joinville and today is August 5th, 2026. Today's live stream, How Does the State Manufacture Inequality? Our intention is to help you reason about how inequality occurs in the Brazilian state and other states, especially in Latin America. But how does this inequality happen? We'll explain exactly how the state is treated. Of some to the detriment of others. But how does he see this connection to the whole thing? So Leiva will talk about how the state manufactures inequality. The topic seems complex, but it's quite simple. I think you'll all understand this because it really is very simple. The state manufactures inequality mainly because it doesn't see certain things. Oh, why? Because the state doesn't see certain things. Wasn't it the state? The vision we have of the state is a vision manufactured within us. Governments come, politics come, and they manufacture the vision we have of the state. Normally, for a long time in our lives, we think of the state as something distant that's there to collect taxes, to punish you, to persecute you, to see where you go wrong, to imprison you. That's the vision of the state, an archaic vision of the state, an old vision of the state, and many politicians use it. The state is there to enslave you. The state is there to collect taxes from you. So it's a vision of someone who wants to destroy the state or who has already hijacked the state and wants you to be against the state. The state has a much broader concept. It involves the citizen and the territory. It involves the citizen's body and the territory. In the current state, in our state, this isn't very clear. Citizens only appear in the state when they file debt claims with a CPF, Brazilian tax identification number, with a bank account. They don't appear in the state as a living being, a body territory. Isn't that impressive? So how does the state manufacture inequality? By not seeing the citizen's body, by not seeing the living being. So it already begins to create inequalities because the state was built on a strange basis, on the basis of a Greek Roman Republic and democracy. I'll talk a little more about that in a moment. But look, the state manufactures inequality because it's not seeing, because it doesn't perceive things. How can the state not perceive? Legally, through its institutions, because the state is an abstract thing. If you divide a state, you'll arrive at a territorial body, but the state itself doesn't recognize the territorial body as the smallest part of the state. It recognizes the smallest part of the state. Suddenly it's the Brazilian territory. Suddenly it's the citizen and the territory. Is it only the citizen or the territory? And then it gets a little lost. Can there be a state without territory? Can there be? And like culture, so it gets lost. What's happening is that we need more clarity from the state. We need the state to understand that the minimum unit of a state is a territorial body and biomes if the state has more than one biome. If the state's territory has Ours, for example, has the Atlantic forest, the Amazon, the Cerrado, the Pampas. So we have many biomes in the state. They are bodies, territories embedded within biomes. The state doesn't see this. And that's what we're going to see because the state manufactures inequality because it's not seeing this. And how can you help the state? By talking to your politician, with your city councillor, with your mayor, with your representative, with the senator. If you have contact with anyone else, whoever you have in politics, you're going to say, look, we need the state to have a better understanding of reality because the state comes from this tendency. And where did the state come from? Let's take the pre-colonial area here, before Brazil and the Americas were invaded by Europe. Before being invaded, there was a culture here that we won't go into detail about now, but this European invasion came as Emperors like the first Emperor Dom Pedro came with this idea of empire, with this idea of a structure of an organization, a structure that would exploit extractivism and bring norms and rules and would impose these norms and rules in that place. Look, norms and rules from Europe, from Portugal, coming to the territory on the other side of the Atlantic. Inequality, the norm and rule must be born from the territory, from the local needs of each body territory. And then, yes, norms and rules born from these people and these biomes you have now. A state is being formed, attempting to fulfill these rules and norms. I'll explain it differently to make it easier for you. I'll see if I can make it simpler for you. You look at a river. The state doesn't see the river. The state sees the river if the river is producing fish. But you look at the river, and the river has clean, sweet, good, pleasant, potable water. Can you drink the river water? Perfect. The state is seeing the fish production, yes, but the river water that is feeding everyone with river water, the state is not seeing. But for some reason related to mining, the river was polluted. The river rotted. Does the river's pollution mean it rotted? The river water is undrinkable. A polluted river creates more diseases. Disease creates problems for the entire community and demands more hospitals and medicine. And the river water now has to be potable, bottled water. This generates more money, more hospitalizations, more money. The GDP went up. Did progress increase? No, it didn't increase progress. Inequality increases because those who exploited the river are richer, but those who fed themselves and lived from the river are much poorer. And the state is what allowed this to happen. Did you notice? The state manufactures inequality because it is blind. It is blind to the entire body of the territory, that baby born on the banks of that river, that biome that is the clean river. The state doesn't see that. The state sees that we are going to mine, we are going to look for gold, we are going to look for something. It sees it when it comes to the monetary aspect of money, the economic aspect. But what about the entire biome? So the state is short-sighted. But this short-sightedness of the state is not without reason. The state is like this because of the work of an elite that came to exploit. But this elite arrived in 1500. But it abandoned the trend. It's impressive. And sometimes in the previous title I was going to use for this live stream, I had linked it to how the state has to stop looking at the effects and start looking at the causes. Wow, it's not possible with the state, with all its knowledge, all its expertise in engineering, literature, philosophy, social structures, law. It won't look at the causes, it only focuses on the effects. Our state is focused on the effects. Yes. Why do you look at the effect? Because it can't understand the river. The state doesn't understand the river. The state doesn't understand the biome, because the biome will only be. It's perceived in the state when it begins to be exploited. So the biome producing clean air isn't noticed. It doesn't factor into the state's calculations. Did you notice how the state manufactures inequality? Because it's blind. Look, the state needs infrastructure, railways. It needs hydroelectric power, okay, telecommunications. It needs it. The state needs all of that. These highways, these hydroelectric plants, air treatment, it's placed on top of something. That something is the biome. This needs to be clearly stated to the state. The biome is an active resource that the state doesn't recognize. It recognizes the biome as something that can. How much wood will I gain by extracting it from this biome? How much can I gain by mining this biome? How much excess productivity can I generate by destroying this biome, destroying this biome? Hold on, then I'll create inequality, because those who destroyed it will become richer, obviously. And in becoming richer, there's something that will come into play in terms of cause and effect that I'm going to tell you about. Something very important. It's simple to say it can have several variables. But for you, cause and effect in the state today, why does the state manufacture inequality today? Look, this is a causal cycle. So let's break it down for you. Money buys reach and influence. Very wealthy people achieve greater reach and influence on social media. With truths or lies, you gain attention. Attention produces votes and permissions, little laws and new rules. When you're a politician who facilitates mining in this way, Petrobras doing this or that, the minerals being exploited in that manner because you managed to become a politician. Permissions protect profit. You got richer, and profit buys more reach. And reach, money buys that reach and influence. So reach, influence, capturing attention produces votes and permission, the permission to give one more. And it enters a cycle of positive reinforcement, where this person goes, and becomes like a volcano of life, builds a mast, and buys a bunch of congressmen, senators, ministers, and public officials, buys its influence, and buys laws, rules, and regulations, and the state manufactures inequality. But what does the state do? It sends police to the regions of inequality, because if I send the police there and have them kill poor black people, it gets votes. Because then these people, these politicians are showing that they are strong in corruption. Hold on. São Paulo is a very typical example of this. Right-wing parties come in, Tarcísio and others, and they start promoting aggression, and the number of cell phone thefts has increased. It's something, São Paulo has become absurd in that sense, because they put people in power who don't address the root causes. They focus on the effects, but the effect is glamorous. Going into the favela, breaking things, killing people gets votes. You win votes with that. And then with those votes, you increase your influence and permissions, money leaks here, money leaks there, and they get richer. Then the state falls far short of what society needs. The state, in my concept, a state that will later be your concept or that of others, the smallest unit of a state is the body, the territory. What is the body, the territory? Imagine you sitting there, you're here. You, I'll suppose I'm you, so I'm here. You are here. I, air, water, place, space, territory, food, drink, wherever I am, I exist in space. I exist in the biome. I exist in a territory around me. I'm not just a CPF, Brazilian tax identification number. I am the body of the territory, and this body is territory. The minimum unit of the state, and how does it do that? When the biome and the territorial body are entities recognized by the state, even without a CPF, Brazilian taxpayer ID, even without a bank account, even without bank balances or debts, it is recognized by the state and inequality decreases. But how can the state recognize a territorial body? If the territorial body is the minimum unit of the state, the profitability, the income of the state should go to the entire territorial body. This is not minimum income, it would be income against the territory, and then inequality decreases. Does the state want this? The state wants it, but it's been hijacked. Those who hijack the state don't want it. Those who have taken over the state want it to be cleaned up. And the state spending is close to 1.11 trillion in interest that goes to people who are basically hijacking the state. So we have a positive feedback loop feeding those who hijack the state. Those who hijack the state are managing to control this money power. And look how interesting it is that a state takes the interest and distributes it to the top. From the social pyramid, it distributes interest at the very top, and it creates opacity in the secret budget, for example. You know those things in Congress? Secret budget, billions here, there, and everywhere, and other things that leak from one side to the other. And another thing about the secret budget is opacity and advertising and gambling too. The state is allowing advertising and gambling. The state has the federal lottery, gambling, games of chance. There are betties. Not that the state owns betties, but the state has at least now regulated the betties to have taxes. But Congress didn't even want to tax the betties because Congress, in a way, protects these power structures. Why does it protect the power structure? Because of that causal thing I told you about. Money buys reach and influence. Reach captures attention. Attention produces votes and permissions protect profits, right? Profits buy more reach and influence. They buy representatives, they buy senators. So if a bait makes a lot of profit, you can be sure that representatives and senators are being bought so that Zegrinya can be given preferential treatment to leverage those profits. But outside of betting, there's the financial market. The leverage that Master used was a huge act of corruption. But it's impossible to get there because the structure in our state is opaque. Why is it opaque? Because this money that came from this fund, that came from that fund, whose guarantee is that other fund has a bunch of CNPJs, Brazilian company tax IDs, and a bunch of things that nobody finds out who they are, but the money flows in an opaque way. It's a negligent state, a state that doesn't make it clear who owns the money. These are funds, trusts, and corporate tax IDs belonging to habitual debtors. You grow very large, changing companies and more companies, 10, 20 companies, and the individual taxpayer ID is still far behind. This creates inequality. It's a state that is unequal. It produces inequality. But what is the source of this factory? The source is that it doesn't see, doesn't perceive, doesn't recognize the body, the territory, and it doesn't recognize the biome. I'm serious about this. It truly doesn't recognize. If you check the Constitution, the biome is nothing. The Amazon is nothing. Are we going to preserve it? No. We will extract, we will exploit. Because do you know what exploitation means? The perception of the state is through exploiting the biome. To colonize the biome, why does it need to colonize the Amazon? Here I agree with Ayrton Cranach. Cranach says the following: this government, even a left-wing government, wants to colonize the Amazon for what purpose? Defend this territory, defend it as it is, try to make money develop and be created, not through debt, as is the current economic model. These are extremely intelligent people, but as they approach 18, 20, 22, 24, 28 years old, the financial market hijacks them. Our brilliant minds are working almost to launder money. What is happening to the state? Is it allowing itself to be led by a financial market that always wants to create money through debt? How about changing this paradigm? So how about we start creating money now also through credit without debt, with retail CBDCs? A new state, a state that understands color in the sector, that understands life, a state focused on life, the life of the biome, the life of each citizen. So these differences make you realize that the state will stop with the nonsense, oh, because our prison population is enormous. Then you'll see that 70% are black. Hold on, what's happening? This is almost racism. The population is black. What's happening is a lack of protection from the state. When the state arrives, it's arriving too late. And I'm going to talk about some differences. There's time. Sometimes I say that one power of the state should be money and time, and it's also linked to processes. Some processes that go on for 10, 20 years end up disappearing because the process has expired. It's no longer valid because it's been 10, 20 years. So these processes that involve a lot of money slow down the process. processes that involve, for example, a public need in your region, a poor person near a river with sewage problems, something similar. That's difficult. That communication reaches all of Brazilian territory, but if the girl gives a sign of falling, did you notice? The time it takes for news to reach the media also determines how incompetent the state is at preserving life, at preserving the biome. Biomes are being hijacked, biomes are being destroyed, and this news doesn't get through. This news is included because the stock market is nervous. The financial market didn't like this or that action. Why didn't the financial market like this or that action? Was it an action that preserved life or not? No, because this news gets ahead, because this news becomes a priority. Because the state isn't defending life, it's defending the financial market. And the financial market generates money and is important to the state. We're not discussing that. Yes, but the financial market keeps generating debt, money often with leverage. A leverage that I talked to you about a while ago, false leverage. I don't know which one really. He buys all the worthless paper, this worthless paper for pennies. He talks like that with all the papers here. So these papers are worth 1,000 times more. And now this fund has such profitability. Lie after lie in the financial market, that's expertise, that's business. The river is polluting the state in November. We're still deforesting. Oh, deforestation is decreasing. We should increase reforestation. Talking about deforestation, where is the state? And abandoned bodies and territories. The mother who needs care when the baby is born, the pregnancy, the education. The state doesn't arrive, the state doesn't arrive. Then a teenager arrives, already learning, already killing because the state didn't arrive sooner. It doesn't arrive sooner. By not arriving sooner, he's allowing the factory of inequality to thrive. So he arrives with the police, arrives to put on a show of arresting people, and we need security, we need that state too. But man, is that an effect? Sometimes we're in a state that works on effects, not on causes. And you can see big problems happening, and the effect is televised, it's the effect, and the population is overwhelmed with information. I remember very well that the far right, Steve Bannon, a while ago, someone said that the secret to success is to bombard the news with lies and falsehoods to confuse the entire population. The idea that politicians are all corrupt and dirty leads people to believe that. But behind all this, the population gets lost. They can no longer understand how to vote. They only know who to hate. And this polarization is based on lies spread en masse. Certainly, there are very wealthy individuals behind these corporate entities and funds, right? And the financial system is behind it, spreading falsehoods and paying off this or that person. Spreading images of these people so that they will speak ill of the state. The state wants to fulfill its obligations. The state wants more taxes. This state is worthless. There's no answer. Brazil is like this. It's gotten into the heads of a lot of people, and they can't say with data why it's like this. If you press a little, and Lula, he starts one lie after another and gets lost, and inequality remains. And I ask you, is the river next to your house still polluted? Is the sewage still open? Why isn't this the issue? Because the state isn't involved. Because the state is negligent in these extremely basic things. Basic sanitation is a structural necessity, and the state is fighting hard for it. But it looks at basic sanitation but doesn't see the bodies and territories everywhere because it's not in the Constitution, you understand? My attack isn't directly at the state for not having this perceptive structure of a territorial corpus, of who is being born now, of our elders, and of who is dying now. It doesn't have that perception. It will perceive it through the bank account, through the flow of money. We are perceived by the flow of money we generate, not by who we are. That's inequality, because if you have a certain financial level, in a way you are perceived by the state or defended by the state. But if the state were more responsible, it would act more on the root causes. And I'll tell you the causes: biome, body and territory, education, security, health. The population will do well with the flows of money that pass through fintechs and such, going back and forth in cash, buying apartments. Then you say, hey, why do these guys have so much cash on hand? Because they're corrupt. Or, as a friend of mine says, look, a congressman who got rich stole. If he was already poor when he was a congressman at the beginning, and now he has 100 properties, 50 siblings, he stole, there's no other way. You don't need to think about many things. A congressman doesn't earn enough to own 50 properties. If a congressman owns 50 properties, he stole, he's corrupt. No, man, just look at the data calmly. Businessmen have their wealth, but then politics doesn't enrich anyone. But who steals? Whoever creates these permits, laws, and regulations to facilitate this or that businessman or this or that flow of money in a false way is creating inequality, because at this moment, what are people saying and what are the comments on in the mainstream media? The government has to do its homework, and its homework is to reduce the cost of healthcare, reduce the cost of security, reduce the cost of education, hold on, it's $1 trillion in interest that we're paying right now. And why not reduce this interest payment? Is it possible? Yes, it is. We can create an order within the state itself where we recognize the biome. The biome is creating water. The biome is creating biodiversity. The biome is there and it is productive. And if it enters the state as productive, it can generate currency as productivity. And if the biome enters as a state, as a generator of productivity currency, it can go down from retail, enter as biome income. And we have money entering the economy, big money, large sums of money entering the economy, but money in real biome income entering the economy. So I'm going to cut from education. We're not going to let these people, we're not going to say anything on the internet. Let this flood of lies happen. Nothing like what the guy says, freedom of speech. Let everyone lie however they want. When you post a news story about what happens in your life on the internet, you post one news story. That news story was passed on to 2, 3, or 4,000 people. He posted 1 million times, 10 million, 20 million, 30 million times. It's not the same news. They flood the internet with other lines. So our news, or news about reality, gets pushed down, and lies are published and replicated many times, giving us a sense of protection against something that is wrong and something that is false. Do you have protection from this impersonation? I know I'm realizing it correctly, but no, you are being attacked by algorithms that locate your profile and say, they tell you exactly what you want to hear, distorting the news from reality and adapting it to what you want to hear, leaving the news with a bias that's the opposite of what you want to hear. It's tailored to your needs. So what was fact becomes news, and the news is adapted to what you want to hear. It deviates from reality, and we get lost, and inequality happens. Jackson, you talked a lot about inequality and how do we solve it? Real problems. Look at the tree near your house. Look at the river near it. Look at the trash collection. Zero waste is what you need in the city. The city's pollution, the air and the water quality. These are news from the biome itself or from the city itself. These are concrete realities. The screen doesn't give you concrete reality. It shows what was the algorithm or what someone did to make it show you on your phone or computer screen. There you won't find the materiality of things. There you will find visual and sound effects. And the state is just standing there quietly, watching, letting it happen. When it tries to make a new rule, the representatives are already polarized, talking about freedom of expression. It's the freedom of expression of the body, territory in a clean biome, in the sculpture that you in polarization, you have to express yourself in this way with this group. And if you are different from the group or excluded from the group, inequality increases because even a person with low investigative power adapts or submits to belonging to a group and saying what the group wants them to say, even if they don't believe it. So false groups remain, but everyone needs belonging. That's what inequality is. Today, the state is a factory of inequality that pretends to defend and uphold equality, philosophers and so on, rights. The rights that now enter the state with laws and norms. Tomorrow the deputies change and take away the rights. The structure has to enter within the state. It has to perceive the citizen body as a minimal unit of the state and the biome yielding, generating revenue for the state. That's already perceived. The citizen body also generating revenue with the citizen direct and the biomes. Wow, two large revenues. So the state begins to perceive two entities, the citizen body, biomes, and revenue. Money is flowing into the state. Now the state is starting to take responsibility because it sees the biome and sees it as a citizen. Folks, that's what I wanted to leave you with. Use this, tell your politician, let them know. We need to awaken this political awareness that we change Brazil through politicians, not through anything else. Politicians will change our society. We need politicians, okay? A big hug until next Wednesday.